She found something in her dad's room and now questions the love story she grew up believing in. There was a brown paper bag sitting on the bed. It looked empty. She almost threw it away. And then she picked it up, and everything she thought she knew about her parents started to shake. She was just folding laundry. She was not supposed to find anything. She was not supposed to feel anything other than the quiet comfort of being back in her childhood home the night before Mother's Day. The house smelled the way it always had, that specific combination of her dad's coffee and the fabric softener her mom had used for 30 years, a smell that still lived in every towel and every pillowcase even though her mom had not been home in over a year. She had been moving through the rooms on autopilot, the way you do in a space that your body still remembers better than your mind does. And yet here she was, 36 years old, standing in her parents' bedroom, holding something that made her question the love story she had been watching her whole life. Let me back this up for you, because context is everything here. Our narrator is 36 years old and she is spending the night at her parents' house so that she and her dad can visit her mom together the next morning at the dementia care facility where her mom now lives. Think about what that setup already contains before we even get to the thing she found. A daughter who loves her parents enough to drive over the night before. A father who coordinates the visit so he does not have to walk in alone. A family that has built rituals around something painful because rituals are how people survive. Her mom is 71. Her dad is 73. They have been together for 56 years, married for 46 of them. That is not just a long marriage. That is a whole life built together, layer by layer, through every season imaginable. Through young and broke and figuring it out. Through raising a child. Through watching each other age. Through everything. Her dad grew up and went to school out of state. During that time her parents had what she describes as an open arrangement, the kind young people sometimes fall into when distance makes things complicated and feelings are still being figured out. There were probably other people, other connections, the kind of youthful searching that happens when you're young and far away and not yet sure what your life is supposed to look like. But they always came back to each other. Every time. Like there was a gravity between them that neither of them could fully explain or fully resist. They moved in together. They waited to get married. They waited to have her. Every step was deliberate, chosen, the opposite of accidental. They built something intentional and real, and it held for decades. Her mom was diagnosed with early onset dementia around the age of 56. Let that number sit for a second. 56. That is not old. That is the age where people are still raising teenagers, still planning retirement vacations, still very much in the middle of life. And yet the disease began its slow and brutal work, taking pieces of her mom away year by year while her dad stood right there and refused to look away. There is something almost unbearable about imagining that moment of first diagnosis. The drive home from the doctor. The silence in the house afterward. The moment when her dad would have had to look at the woman he had built his entire adult life with and understand that the road ahead was going to be something neither of them had signed up for, and that he was going to walk every step of it anyway. He shows up every single day. That detail matters. Not most days. Not when it is convenient. Every day. She tells us that no snow, no sleep deprivation, no dark of night has stopped him from going to see her. He has built his entire daily routine around those visits the way other people build their routines around work or exercise, except this is not something that gives him energy back. It costs him something every time. And she gives us this image that wrecked me a little, because over the Christmas holiday when he had 3 days of family parties, he drove 2 hours back home in between just to visit his wife, then drove 2 hours back to the next party. Think about that. The car. The dark highway. The pulling himself away from family noise and warmth and laughter, just to sit beside someone who may or may not have known he was there that day. That is not obligation. That is devotion in the most physical and exhausting sense of the word. But her mom is in a memory unit now. She has been there for about a year and 2 months. And while she still recognizes her dad on most days, the woman who used to have long conversations with him, who used to be his partner in every sense, is not fully there anymore in the way that she once was. The conversations they have now are different. The silences are different. The version of his wife who knew his coffee order and his moods and his entire history is not always the person sitting across from him in that room. That is a particular kind of grief that has no clean name. You are not widowed. You have not lost them to death. You cannot grieve them the way the world recognizes. But you are losing them, slowly, in pieces, and you still have to show up and love the version of them that remains, and you have to do it with no finish line, no resolution, just the ongoing daily work of loving someone through their own disappearance. So our narrator had thought about this before. She had actually brought it up to her dad directly once, told him she would not blame him if he wanted to find some kind of companionship. She meant it sincerely. She was giving him permission, or at least signaling that she would understand. She had probably rehearsed that conversation in her head before she had it, wondering how he would react, bracing herself for the discomfort of even raising it. And her dad's response was emphatic. Not hesitant. Not conflicted. Emphatic. He said he would never cheat on her mom. Never. Full stop. And she believed him completely because everything she had watched him do for decades backed that word up. He was not the kind of man who said things he did not mean. He was the kind of man who drove 4 hours round trip on Christmas Eve. So when she found that brown paper bag, she did not brace herself for anything. She was not suspicious. She was not even curious in any loaded way. She looked inside the same way you would look inside any random bag left on a bed, the casual glance of someone just tidying up. And there it was. A bright pink vibrator and a box of condoms. I genuinely had to stop and just sit with that for a moment. Because what do you even do with that information when it is about your parents? Now she is sitting in their house, an hour after finding it, her dad still out at game night with friends, and she is rattling. Her word. Rattled. And I think that word is doing a lot of work here, because rattled is not the same as devastated and it is not the same as angry. It is the specific feeling of having the ground shift under your feet just slightly, enough to make you unsure of your footing, unsure of what you are standing on. She put the bag back where she found it. She went back to the laundry. But her hands probably were not quite steady. She is trying to figure out what any of this means, and whether she says something when he gets home, and what she would even say if she did. Here is what I think makes this so genuinely hard. It is not straightforward anger. She is not furious at her dad. She says she understands that people have needs, and she clearly means that. She has empathy for what his life has looked like for the past 15+ years of watching her mom decline. She knows he is lonely. She knows the version of partnership he used to have, the late-night conversations, the shared jokes, the physical closeness, the simple act of having someone who knows you completely, is no longer available to him in the way it once was. She has thought about his loneliness. She has sat with it. That is why she brought it up with him in the first place. But there is this other feeling sitting underneath all of that, and she names it carefully. Disappointment. Not in a harsh way. In a heartbroken way. Because she had placed their relationship on a pedestal. She had grown up watching something that looked like one of those rare and real love stories, the kind people talk about when they say marriages used to mean something. She had oriented some part of her own understanding of love around what she saw her parents build. It was the quiet evidence that it was possible, that people could choose each other over and over, that devotion was not just a word. And that image is now complicated. Not destroyed, but complicated. The pedestal is cracked, and she does not quite know what the relationship looks like without it being perfect, and she does not quite know what that crack means for the version of love she has believed in her whole life. She also adds a detail in her edit that completely reframes the situation. She had assumed the items were for use with someone else, meaning she assumed her dad was seeing another person. But then she considers the alternative and is not sure that changes things for the better. Her mom is in a care facility. She knows who her husband is. But she is not in a position to consent in a full and clear way, and the facility itself and her mom's roommate would certainly have something to say about it. So whichever direction she looks at this, there is no clean answer waiting for her. Every path she walks down ends at a place that is hard to stand in. And the timing could not feel heavier. It is the night before Mother's Day. She is going to wake up tomorrow and make coffee in this kitchen and look at her dad across the table and carry this thing she found inside her chest. She is going to sit next to him in the car on the drive over. She is going to walk into that memory unit and hug her mom and smile and be present and be a good daughter. And she is going to do all of that while holding whatever she found tonight. The weight of that, the specific performance of normalcy required of her tomorrow, is not a small thing. What I keep coming back to is that this man has given so much of himself for so long. 15+ years of watching the person he loves disappear slowly, while still showing up every single morning. He has not outsourced this grief. He has not stepped back from the marriage because it became painful or inconvenient. He has shown up with flowers and with patience and with 4-hour Christmas drives. Whatever she found in that bag, whether it tells a story of loneliness reaching a breaking point or something more complicated, it exists inside a life of extraordinary love and extraordinary loss. And she is trying to hold all of that at once, the love she has witnessed and the complication she has just found, which is why she is rattled, which is why she reached out at 1 a.m. to strangers on the internet. Here is where I land on this, and I want to be honest about it because I think this situation deserves more than a soft answer. Her dad is human. He is 73 years old and he has been a caregiver, an every single day visitor, a devoted husband through one of the most painful things a person can go through. He did not get a break from this grief. He did not get to set it down on the weekends. He has carried it every single morning when he wakes up in a bed that used to have 2 people in it, and every single evening when he comes home to a house that is completely quiet. He has earned complexity. He is allowed to be imperfect inside the story of his love. Finding something in a paper bag does not erase 56 years of showing up. The vow he made to her when she said she would not blame him, that emphatic never, was made by a man who perhaps had not yet reached the point of breaking. He said it and he meant it. He was not performing nobility for his daughter. He was telling her what he genuinely believed about himself in that moment, because at that moment it was true. People say what they believe about themselves in the moment they say it. That does not make them liars when they eventually reach their limit. It makes them human. He may have hit a wall that he simply did not anticipate, a wall built over a decade and a half of loneliness and loss and still showing up. And the way he has handled everything else in this marriage earns him at the very least a conversation instead of a confrontation. If she decides to say something, and I think she should, it needs to come from love and not from judgment. She should not walk in the door tomorrow morning with a question that sounds like an accusation. She should tell him what she found, let him know she is not angry, and give him the space to be honest with her about where he is. He spent 15 years protecting everyone else. Maybe he needs someone to finally ask him how he is really doing. And maybe she is the only person in his life who can do that. Whatever she finds out, their relationship, hers and her dad's, is strong enough to hold an honest conversation. That is what makes this story different from a betrayal. It is a son who has never actually stopped choosing his wife, now navigating what it means to still be a living person inside an impossible situation. She can hold that truth and love him through it. I genuinely believe she already does. My half-sister bullied me for years and now my dad wants us to be one big happy family. He is 19 years old and his dad is asking him to love someone who spent years making his life miserable. Not to tolerate her. Not to be polite at family dinners. To actually build a real sibling relationship with her. And he keeps saying no. His dad clearly thinks he is being stubborn. But I am about to make the case that this young man might be one of the clearest thinkers in this entire situation. So here is the setup. Our narrator is 19 years old. He was raised by his single dad after losing his mom when he was just over a year old. That kind of loss, losing a parent before you even have real memories of them, shapes a person in ways that are hard to fully explain. You grow up with a hole in the shape of someone you never got to know. You watch other kids get picked up from school by their moms and you feel something you do not even have the words for yet. It becomes part of your identity whether you choose it or not. It is something you carry quietly, something that sits in the background of almost every experience you have. And for this kid, it became something someone else chose to weaponize against him. Before anyone found out about the DNA connection, he and this girl were just two kids at the same school who did not get along. And by did not get along I do not mean mild tension or petty arguments. She bullied multiple kids throughout their school years. She targeted him specifically. She went after the thing she knew would hurt most, which was the fact that his mom had died. She would tell him his mom did not want him so badly that she would rather die than raise him. Picture being a child and hearing that. Picture sitting with that sentence long after the school day ended, long after the lights went out at night, wondering in the way that only a grieving kid can wonder if there is some version of it that might be true. She said it more than once. She said it in ways that were calculated to cut deep, not just in the way that thoughtless kids sometimes blurt out something cruel without understanding the weight of it. This was targeted. This was repeated. This was intentional. I need to pause here because I want to be very clear about something. Using a dead parent against a grieving child as a weapon is one of the lowest things a person can do. That is not childhood roughness. That is cruelty with a specific target. And our narrator did not crumble. He did not transfer schools, even when his dad offered. He stayed with his friends. He documented everything, reported everything to teachers, escalated to the principal. He refused to be driven out. There is something quietly remarkable about that. A lot of kids would have taken the exit ramp. He chose to stay, to stand his ground, to not let her have the satisfaction of watching him disappear. He was not scared of her. He simply thought she was a bad person, and he was not wrong about that. Then middle school hit and things got worse. Her parents divorced and her dad left, and instead of that pain making her more empathetic, it made her more destructive. She came after him harder, as though his presence alone reminded her of something she could not stand to look at. She went after two other girls in their grade whose dads were gay, and she was so relentless toward one of them that the girl transferred schools to escape her. Think about what it takes to drive someone out of their own school. That is not venting frustration. That is a sustained campaign. This person had a pattern. She was not just lashing out at one person because of one bad day. She was identifying vulnerable people, finding the softest parts of them, and going after those parts with everything she had. 2.5 years ago, her mom finally told her the truth. Their dad, who had not known he was her father because her mom and her mom's then husband had kept it from him, turned out to actually be her biological father. A DNA test confirmed it. And just like that, the girl who had spent years being his enemy was now, technically, his half-sister. Here is where it gets complicated in a way that I think a lot of people gloss over in these conversations. When she first found out, she actually got worse with him. More mom comments. More cruelty. As though the revelation had rattled something loose in her and she took it out on the most familiar target. And then she flipped, decided she wanted a family, and started pushing for a real sibling relationship. And his dad, who was getting to know her and navigating his own complicated feelings about all of this, eventually started asking our narrator to try. He said no. His dad offered therapy. He said he did not need therapy to know how he felt. And I think people hear that line and assume he is being closed off or defensive. But I think he was being precise. He is not confused about his feelings. He does not need someone to help him process them into a different conclusion. He is not suppressing grief or avoiding hard truths about himself. He knows what he wants, and what he wants is to not have a relationship with someone who spent years deliberately hurting him and the people around him. That is not dysfunction. That is clarity. At graduation she got cruel again because their dad refused to get back together with her mom to create the family unit she had been imagining. Then, after her mom found a new partner and the two of them apparently drifted, she came back around again, wanting the relationship. There is a pattern here too, and it is important to name it. She wants the family connection most when she has the least other support. She reaches for him when she is at a low point, and pulls back or gets ugly when she feels secure elsewhere. That is not someone trying to genuinely rebuild. That is someone treating a relationship like a safety net they can take down and put back up whenever it suits them. And he has watched this cycle play out enough times to recognize it for exactly what it is. He talked to her twice for his dad's sake. She made excuses and said she was just a kid when she did those things. He pointed out, correctly, that they are the same age. She does not get to claim youth as a defense when he lived through the same years as a target rather than a perpetrator. That response from her tells you something important. Real accountability does not sound like explaining why you did something. It sounds like understanding what it cost the other person. And now his dad is really pushing. And our narrator is wavering, not because his feelings have changed, but because he loves his dad and does not want to let him down. That part is important and worth sitting with for a moment. He is carrying the weight of not wanting to disappoint the one parent who has always been there for him. That is a very specific kind of pressure, the kind that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with love. He is not wavering because he has started to believe she deserves a chance. He is wavering because of love for someone else entirely. Here is my take, and I am not going to soften it. He does not owe her a relationship. Sharing DNA with someone does not cancel out what they did to you. It does not obligate you to open a door to someone who spent years kicking it in. The idea that blood automatically means family is something a lot of people say without thinking about what it actually costs the person being asked to just get over it. His dad is too close to this. The man found out he has a daughter he did not know about, and that is a genuinely complicated thing to navigate. Of course he wants his two kids to be close. Of course he is hoping that love can smooth over the history. But wanting something for your children and being right about what they need are two different things. His dad cannot feel what those years of bullying felt like. He was not in those hallways. He did not have to sit in a classroom next to someone who told him his dead mom chose not to be alive over choosing him. He heard about it secondhand. His son lived it in real time, alone, in the body of a child who had already lost too much. Our narrator is 19. He is not a child throwing a tantrum. He is a young adult making a clear and informed decision about who gets access to his life. He tried twice at his dad's request. He gave it a fair go. She made excuses instead of taking real accountability. And his instincts about her character, instincts that were formed over years of direct experience, have not been proven wrong. He is allowed to trust himself on this. He should trust himself on this. Love your dad. Support your dad having a relationship with her. But your life, your peace, and your sense of safety in your own family are yours to protect. No amount of shared blood changes that. Drop a comment below telling me which story hit you harder. I genuinely cannot pick one. And if you made it all the way here, a like and a subscribe would mean the world.